some of the women that tried to leave had a difficult time getting their children. Very few women that have left comparatively got to take their children. More women have escaped without their children than with.
I can see that in some cases.
They can't survive.
The Kingston women were pretty obedient.
So they didn't leave.
And I don't recall, it could have been some that did leave and take them with, but it's been so long I can't write, and I've been trying to get away from all of it.
Right.
But I know with my kids and I were very close, and what this did for me in a way is that I could love my children and get close to them and teach them. And my parents were worldly parents, and my mother had worked for people who had a little bit of money out there in education.
Right.
And so she wanted her kids to be like that too.
So you had some background that was
yeah. And so my oldest daughter went to college. She is now a manager of the transplant lab at the University of Utah.
Nice.
Where they do, and my oldest son is a manager at Coca-Cola. And my other son, he is a manager at Pan Sporting Goods, one of their stores, and he right up there, and he gets free tickets to the jazz game and stuff. So does Coca-Cola. My kids are out there being, you might say, affluent. And
that's really good. But your children are not the common children that come out of polygamy. No, they're not. So what are the common children that come out of polygamy? Tell us what really happens to most of these kids.
They're obedient, and they get married when they're supposed to, quote unquote.
What constitutes supposed to?
Age, and when somebody has had direction, a man.
Where they're told to marry.
My kid said, no, that's an erection.
So the children are told to get, they're basically placed in marriages by who?
Well, they have to have, they call it direction. They have to have direction from God.
So God tells somebody where that child's supposed to go.
Yes, and then the child themselves are supposed to find out where they go. And if what they find out matches what those big guys on top says, then fine. If not, then you better go back and keep your head straight.
Oh yes, I've been told by more than one woman that she had to go back and fast and pray, and she couldn't eat until she had the same answer that they had.
Oh my!
Yeah, she had to fast and pray, and she wasn't going to have any food again until she had the same answer that they had for her.
Oh, that's too bad.
And another woman told me that she had a choice. And I said, what choice did she have? And she said, Uncle so-and-so or Uncle so-and-so. I had to choose between the two. It's the only choice I had.
Ew. Yeah.
Now, of course, uncle is frequently used loosely.
Oh.
Yeah, among polygamous groups. You know, we used to all call Uncle Roy the leader.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, everybody called him Uncle Roy. Of course, he probably was uncle to half the people in the town, but the other half called him Uncle anyway.
Yeah.
Uncle Roy Johnson.
It is so mixed up and confusing, and each one has their own direction from God, and so whenever they say goes and somebody else will get what they have, it will conflict. So, and I haven't been there for so long, it's just like,
good.
I've been freed.
Yes, you are. Isn't it utterly amazing that these groups, each one claiming to be God's only mouthpiece on earth, each one of those men that's the only righteous one is so willing to give his daughters to somebody else in another group that is his rival in order to have their daughters? Don't you see some kind of fallacy in that thinking?
That's sick.
Do you know that I have relatives in every single group that I know of?
Really?
I have female relatives in every single group, and every single group is the only one that's right, and every single group is going to take over Mormonism, including the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, because they're God's only true Mormons. I find that pretty ironic, considering that they have all that power over a church they admit they don't even belong to.
It's just wild. Like my oldest son would say, they're knocking butts.
In this effort to decriminalize polygamy, what do you think that's going to do for the safety of the children in the future?
I think it will harm them dreadfully. It will force them more into, more openly into polygamy. And nothing good can come out of polygamy. It's all a lie.
I think it will force them more openly into polygamy too, trying to force the world to accept it as a lifestyle. But it isn't an acceptance of a lifestyle they want. It's a freedom from the legal responsibility that goes with being a legal parent.
Yeah, you're right.
That's exactly it. It's a farce. They're wanting to escape the legal responsibility. They blame everyone else. Whether a polygamist is Islamic, Jewish, fundamentalist, Mormon, Christian, whatever, they all blame King David, Solomon, Abraham, Joseph Smith, somebody that lived 2,000 or 150 years ago before they were born, somebody they never met, for their current behavior today. And that's their justification. They do that to escape the responsibility of their own behavior. And then they tell their family that if they're totally obedient, blind obedience, that they're not responsible either. They're just following God's word. So nobody's responsible here. That's against the religion to be responsible for your behavior.
Yeah. Because God told them to do it.
Right. Now that is a pattern that is already devastating to this state. What do you think is going to happen in the future? That kind of blind obedience and no responsibility having full reign over the legality of the behavior.
I don't know, but I think it's going to be really interesting to find out. And I have friends in Mormonism who is opposed to polygamy. They don't like it. They don't want to live it. They think it's a farce.
I find it ironic that the Mormon Church even allows these people to hold them hostage for their behavior. And basically that is what they're trying to do. That is what they're trying to do. That they believe that man will be punished for his own sins and not Adam's transgressions. But they're not responsible for these people's behavior. And yet these people that claim to be Mormons try to make them responsible, which is going against their own basic mandates.
Yeah.
How much responsibility have you seen in polygamy concerning a father? They're not responsible for these people's behavior. And yet these people that claim to be Mormons try to make them responsible, which is going against their own basic mandates.
Yeah.
How much responsibility have you seen in polygamy? As a father in polygamy, how many of them have you seen that have actually taken care of the educational and medical expenses of their family and spent time with their children? None at all. They can't even take care of their own medical needs. How do they control their families? Like a sergeant in the army? How do they control their families?
Being very passive and yet being very forceful and controlling. It's a form of brainwashing. They condition them from day one to be obedient to what they say. No questions asked.
And when somebody gets out of line, what happens?
They're chastised.
And what you see happen in what is the chastisement? How do they do that?
Sure, it's nice, not no.
I've seen them have somebody fast and pray or until they got the right message, not be treated well by the family until they got the right message, actually being shunned by the family and everybody in the family told to shun them until they got the right message, actually being isolated. Some of them will result to corporal punishment, slapping, beating child or a wife, until they get the right message. Some of them actually teach that it's okay to beat a child nigh unto death to make them obedient, and that's part of the writing. And that's on the internet and everywhere. That's not news, and of course I grew up with that, so I know that's true.
Yeah.
Corporal punishment was a way of life. Have you seen any of those things? Yeah.
I've heard about it. As a child growing up, we were punished, but not like that. And then with my children, I just couldn't do that to him. And he wasn't around enough to pay attention to it either.
What was your feeling and emotion living polygamy when your husband had another wife? How did you feel about that?
It was my older sister, and I respected her. And in my situation, I really had a lot of respect and love for her because she was very giving, and she had sense. We had more sense than anybody else around because we were raised with it. And my sister was very giving and generous, and she was compassionate towards me. She was never arrogant and narcissistic, and I appreciated her.
Did you always get along? Yeah.
Never had an argument, even when we were home as kids.
That's really unusual because in so many situations where I see sisters married to the same man, over time they become real enemies.
We didn't, because I truly had a deep love and respect for my older sister because I could see what was happening.
So what you're telling me is that your common sense gave you more love for her than the condition you were caught in.
Right.
And that was your survival. Yeah, I've seen many sisters, some of which are mine, married to the same men. And they pretend that they have great unity, but they don't. There's a lot of passive-aggressive hatred going back and forth between them. And that's really too bad.
We had that. And even the children, the siblings as they were growing up, had brothers and sisters. They had respect for one another and supported it. But that was one thing that the Kingstons didn't teach, and that was love. You didn't use that word love because it meant sex. And but in my home growing up, because we were both raised with love, respect, common sense, my sister and I worked well together. And I helped her while she was on birth. I'd step in and watch her kids. And I had more kids than she did. I had 8, she had 6. And she delivered my babies. And so we had that blood sister relationship too. So we were fortunate, but others could come from that and they still wouldn't have it.
Right.
But my parents...
Well, the reason you had it, I think, is because you didn't grow up in polygamy. I'm serious.
Yeah.
Because I take a look at my sisters that grew up in polygamy, and to the world they present a united front. To each other, they treat each other as passive-aggressive hatred. It's not direct, but it's so thick you can cut it with a knife. And I've seen that among several women that grew up in polygamy that married the same man. And I'm talking about sisters. You know. Now my father married 2 sisters, and you know, polygamy doesn't work anyway, doesn't it?
Nah,
it doesn't. It never works, no matter what.
You're lying to yourself all the time.
You know, and we loved our aunt, and she tried in her own way, but she had a lot of pain and a lot of misgiving because she was the first wife that was basically deserted for all these other women. And she was not his favorite wife, so she lost that position as first wife to a favorite wife that came down later down the pipe. And it was just very, very sad for every woman, and a very painful thing. So, did your husband only have the 2 wives?
Yeah.
How long were you in polygamy?
Quite a while. I was part of the Kingston group, and as I evolved and got more educated, I became a hypnotist. And when that opened up a whole new world of truth.
Right.
And when I saw that, I could see that I understood it more. It's kind of a complicated thing, but I love mysticism.
Right.
And so as I studied, and how it all came about was that I was watching Donahue one day on TV, and they did a root canal with hypnosis. And as I watched, I thought, wow, I'd like to learn how to do that. And ignored it. And then one day, a brochure came in the mail from my high school that I'd never looked at, community classes. They had a class in there, hypnosis for self-improvement.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And I thought, oh man, I'd like to learn how to do that. What is expected tends to be realized. Self-fulfilling prophecy. So I picked up that brochure, saw hypnosis for self-improvement. I thought, oh boy, how am I going to get $12 to pay for this? So I cashed in pop bottles and different things. And then I signed up for that class at West High School. Now, they showed us how to hypnotize. So I didn't fit into this stuff anymore. I had evolved way beyond. And then when I moved here...
Well, you were daring to investigate the power of the human mind,
right,
rather than somebody else telling you.
We're so limited,
right,
because of what other people tell us. Well, and then and I appreciated my then husband, what he did. He was so good, but he couldn't say it verbally, because he was the firstborn of the founder, and he was a mean SOB. And
you mean his father was mean SOB?
yeah, to him. But then I got my freedom, and I started to think. My immune system started to shut down because I couldn't lie anymore. I'd lied to get my kids food stamps. I'd lied to get them toys for Christmas. I'd lied. The kids had to lie to their friends, and I couldn't do it anymore.
Your children were the ones that couldn't call their dad daddy,
right,
and your children were the ones that couldn't be recognized and have a legal place. And so your children were the second and hidden family.
And they had to lie to their friends about who their father was. And I mean, that's pretty sad.
That's really, really sad.
And they went to school, and I couldn't even get out of bed anymore. My immune system shut down, and I thought, I have to get out of polygamy or I'm not going to make it. So I called them over and ended it. And then I thought, okay, I got out of that, now I got to get out of the clock. So my mind automatically told me what to do. Write a letter to the artist Kingston at that time. When she was alive, she was a big narcissist. And so I wrote her a letter and told her everything that I thought they had done, she had done, the Kingstons to other people in the group, told them the truth. I knew they couldn't handle it. So she kicked me out.
Oh, well, that was your ticket to freedom.
Yep.
You had too much, you knew of too many inconvenient truths.
Yep. And, wow, from then on, I've been on Judge Judy, oh man, so many shows, Truth or Tabloids, CBS This Morning, I was on a lot of TV shows.
Did you have the opportunity to share some of the downside of polygamy to help the public, or
Well,
was this about...
yeah, Tom Green was out and about that time. And so I was kind of content going against him on Judge Judy.
You knew his youngest child bride was my niece.
No.
Linda.
No.
Yeah. And when this happened, we really, really tried to get my brother to step forward and do something about it.
Mm-hmm. That
he was afraid of the consequences and everything that was going to happen to him if he did, and how he'd be punished about going against the plural marriage and etc. And he wouldn't do anything about it. Mm-hmm. Now that's a crime.
Yeah.
That's a crime.
Yeah, I can understand all that.
Yeah. Got a position on TV and all that sort of thing, and nobody ever bothered to look beneath the surface of what that man was doing. Until, finally they did, because he was flaunting it so much that somebody said, hey...
See, it was my attorney, Ted White, that got busy and started doing that because he was involved in politics too. And then we got it going.
John Llewellyn wrote a book, Polygamy Under Attack, and there's a whole section on the crimes that Tom Green committed, and he had the documentation because he was a detective on the case. It's called Polygamy Under Attack, from Elizabeth Smart's kidnapping to Tom Green. It's all in there.
I had a lot of interesting things that I accomplished with that. And now my attorney says we're going to D.C. After the first year, you and I are going to go to Washington, D.C. And I guess the Supreme Court getting it stopped, and it was Doug that got the law after Tom Green.
That was good.
Mm-hmm.
You've done a lot of good. You've done a lot of good just by being honest and being you and having courage, because so many women are so beaten down and so afraid. And you were really fortunate that you had a couple of people in your life that had your older sister that had an honest, normal relationship with as a child. And somebody did love you.
And for my parents, I became an advocate with Tapestry Against Polygamy. I'm not afraid anymore through all this stuff that's come out, because I don't have any secrets.
There you go. Just being real.
Yeah.
Being real.
Just who I am.
Not living a lie. So many women have told me they were so afraid people would find out that they were polygamous, but they were even more embarrassed they might find out because they didn't want something inside of them knew that it was just not something to be proud of.
It was wrong.
It was wrong.
But they couldn't do anything about it. And my dad too. He knew it was wrong. And he didn't like it. But he was from Illinois, and they met Mom out in California, and they came back to Utah and got married and joined the Kingston group.
I want to tell you thank you for doing what you did, and for having the courage to speak up, and to have the love and the understanding to be there for so many women.
Yes.
That needed to have somebody understand where they came from and where their head was at, and help them start over in a world that they were unfamiliar with.
Right.
And you were that gap, that step in between, because you had started your life out in a normal world, got caught up into this, and then had the courage one more time to take that next step and come back out. And you have been a really good catalyst for them.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for your courage and your honesty, and just your loving heart, because you're wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And besides, where did Joseph Smith get the notion that the gods in eternity lived polygamy? And they had all these wives.
In Mormon literature, it says, put your faith not in man. That's the statement. And yet these men say, follow me blindly or you will be damned.
Right.
And so if you want to get everybody's book, because they all write their own book, and each prophet writes his own book, and each one has his own little way, they can get pretty mixed up. And they can confuse each other. And that's why it's mind-boggling, because it's who's telling the story, which way the wind blows.
Oh, yeah.
The crazy thing about these cults is they all have a way of painting the picture with their own colors, their own style, and framed in their own framework, and that's the only way they want to see it, and they refuse to see it any other way.
Yep. And yet, like Mom used to tell me, good common sense tells you that if you do that, that's going to happen.
Good common sense tells you that every human being has the same basic needs. The need to be safe, the need to be loved, the need to be treated with respect, the need to follow their dreams, as well as food, clothing, and shelter. And nobody can blame God for saying, I'm better than that person, I'm going to enslave them and they're going to serve me, I'm going to breed children by them, that one's the wrong color, they're going to hell, they're going to be slaves for eternity, I'm better than you are, I'll tell you how to live, I'm the voice of God. And these same men, they don't put your faith in men. Believe in God, believe in me, turn your money over to God, and write my name on the check.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's the way it goes. So thank you.
And you're welcome.
For being catalysts for so many people, because you have been.
Yes, and now our families are still close, my sisters and mine.
That's wonderful. That's really wonderful.
We really are.
You're
for the fact that I guess we're more close than what we used to be.
Well,
while we were hiding.
Well, you're old enough now to look back and see that you've graduated from courses you never would have enrolled in if you'd known what you were doing.
Yes.
But you are graduates.
Yep. Yep. Yep, we are, aren't we?
Yes. Thank you so much.